Well, I mean, we're still picking in the upper echelon of the draft, which we haven't done for a significant time period. So we feel very comfortable in terms of where the top 7 picks are, and we'll get a good player and an impact player, regardless of the disappointment of moving back a couple spots. That's just the nature of the lottery.
When you're in this kind of area, there's a lot of ways you can kind of go. I don't want to box you in anything here in May, but is there a position that you're kind of looking at right now with that pick that maybe this helps you sort of narrow in where you might go with that?
Well, I mean, if you have a chance to win the lottery, I'm sure you receive phone calls in terms of whether or not you'll ever move that pick. At 7, you still may. It's difficult to move up from there, but we'll do our due diligence in terms of what teams may want to jockey around, and we feel very comfortable about where the scouting that we've done and the player we're going to get at 7 if we decide to stay there.
Do you think there's anybody in this draft that can help an NHL team next year, or do you think this mostly process?
I mean, you never know. The surprises are what they are each year. I think you find a player that comes out of the gate and looks like he can play right away, whether that's acclimation. I mean, some of these guys have been injured for a period of time, so are they, mature enough and physically ready to play? That's to be determined. The league gets harder as it goes along, and you see a lot of these players do get injured, when they start out early. But they're all good players in the upper echelon of the draft. You got some guys that have played pro, over in Sweden. So it's a chance to impact your club. Whether that's next year, that remains to be seen.
How much can kind of the final impression that some of these guys make, how much, whether it's U18s or playoffs, how much can that make, and how do you balance that versus everything?
Yeah, I mean, these players have been scouted for multiple years. Obviously, you want to see players perform their best in crucial time periods and leverage situations that they have a chance to win. Whether that's playoffs and Memorial Cup or their own leagues. U18s that just finished up. So there are good high point moments that you want to evaluate players and how they respond. But you don't want to be weighted down in terms of one single viewing. It's a context of some points in time, 2.5, 3 years that these players have been seen, and you have to have the body of work in place to properly evaluate them.
With the pick this high, what traits are you maybe keying in on? It's like these are the must-haves for a prospect that you want to bring into your organization.
Well, I don't think we're going to be anchored in, whether it's positionally. We're just trying to take the best player that has a chance to be the best player in the National Hockey League that he's capable of being. We always value the hockey sense. You always value skating. You always value whether or not, the player, how competitive a player is. And you try to take the best player that you possibly can. We're just in a position now where we're drafting in an area that we haven't been for some time, and we expect to add an impact player.
How does the exercise change or perhaps sharpen when you come inside versus 24, 29, 30 where you have been before? I imagine it's easier in some sense. How does the whole exercise?
Well, they're still young men, still a lot of development to take place, but they've generally, been picked over to a large degree at a much higher scrutiny, than maybe players down below, because it's wider lens of a lot of different people, not just your own staff, evaluating, writing, and bringing focus to the attributes that the players have, both on and off the ice. So, I think the stakes are a little higher, and they should be. Like I said, you're trying to evaluate players that are impacting your hockey club. You do find players that trickle down and impact later on as well, but I think you have to expect to hit your pick, when you're picking where we are.
Do you have any updates on the coaching search?
Ongoing. Have spoken to some coaches. Haven't done any in-person interviews yet, but we've narrowed a list down, and we're gonna move forward with some Zoom interviews and then in-person interviews in a very short matter.
Are there still candidates that are going to be coaching in Toronto?
Yes.
When you look at Zdeno Chara's role with the organization, what is he doing now in terms of maybe behind the scenes to help you guys out moving forward?
I mean, since the players have left, he's not here on a daily basis. You know, continues to talk to players on his own accord. We don't set any boundaries in terms of where Z in talking to our coaches and our players. We've given him some latitude to as a an advisory role and a mentor role as he sees fit, establish relationships on his own terms. And, I think that will continue to evolve going forward with the new head coach. And we put that in place and the rest of the staff. He'll develop that relationship moving forward and determine how much, involvement he's going to have on that level.
And, sorry, as it relates to the coaching search, have you made any decisions on any of the other guys on your staff in terms of what their future may hold, or is that just all in a holding pattern right now?
No, it's still in a holding pattern. As I referenced earlier, Joe would be part of the search. Jay Leach would be part of the search. So, again, when I referenced that we'll have a new head coach, it could easily be one of them. They're strong candidates, and they'll be in the candidate pool, as I referenced before, and along with some other really good, experience level coaches on different levels. That we're gonna find the right guy.
What is some of the feedback that you've gotten from the people that you've talked to when they look under the hood of hoping to have kind of opinions that?
Yeah, we haven't got into the details of our roster. As I referenced, this is an exciting opportunity for coaches to be interviewing for this position, and that's the indication that they would be, very excited about being the head coach of the Boston Bruins. That's the first and foremost thing that's come across. I'm happy to be part of the selection of being interviewed, and we're fortunate they are. I think they're starting to gather information on the roster and the players that we have in place. And the first question people ask in terms of how healthy we're going to be and return to that full health, so that players will be that they expect impact will be back to do what they do. But the overriding excitement, as we are, to turn a page and come to the decision that we've got the right guy in place.
And this is such an opportunity that doesn't come around very often in terms of trying to pick the brains of coaches. What kind of intelligence and what kind of data have you gotten from these coaches?
Yeah, we haven't done in depth. I've just had general conversations and introductions, so I will get into that. Previous search, we went through that and did glean a lot from what other coaches saw and coaching against us and evaluating the group that we had. And maybe before it was portrayed that we would go through a transition during that period of time. So that was always interesting in terms of what the team that we felt we were going to put on the ice 3 years ago versus the movement that we would be heading towards, depending on what some of those players were going to do. And who we're going to add. Deep down, we've been watching the Providence team play, and they've got an uphill climb now, being down 0-2. But some guys have played well, so I think that's what all coaches are doing, evaluating. Obviously, some of them are evaluating their own teams and not disrupting that. But the other guys are going through the weeds of what this opportunity represents for them.
You watch the playoffs, it's a copycat league. Is there anything that stuck out to you as saying our team needs more of this, or our team needs more of that, taking a page from other teams' playbooks?
Not right now. Early on, some series were a little tilted from the power play, guys getting off to, which generally evens out as the playoffs go along. Goaltending always seems to be a factor, and you saw it, the other night in a game sevens. Obviously, a massive third period for Dallas. The margins are just very, very small, and especially when you get into teams that arguably in the top 5, 6 of the league, and they're going out in the first round. It's just a hard exercise. It's you're at the mercy of what the matchups present sometimes and what the injuries are. You got to have depth. I do believe that some of the teams, their depth scoring has showed up in the early rounds, which is really important. And then in Dallas's case, their big guy, showed up in Game 7. So I think it's pretty much as advertised. It's really, really good hockey, and a team that has a little bit of luck to stay healthy. Their goaltender stays sharp. Special teams has to be generally in the penalty killing side of things that usually wears out as a series goes along. But your depth gets tested, no question about that. The physicality is always ever present.